Today is a waterfall of news. That is, several shocking ones. You can't even imagine what's happening in Canada right now, far from the capital. But in places with oil and workers, they want to join the United States of America. The same dream is shared by the Inuit, the indigenous people of Greenland, whom the Danes tried to wipe out but just didn't have enough time. Most Iranians, also want to be in the United States of America or with the United States of America, and thousands of Iranians have even died for this, including women who took off their veils. Neither Somalis nor Mexicans nor Venezuelans want to leave the United States of America, but especially Ukrainians don't want to leave the United States of America. But we'll talk about all this later. Canada is on the verge of collapse. Canada is facing the possibility of its richest province joining the United States of America. When Justin Trudeau arrived at Mar-a-Lago to talk as equals with Trump about the future relationship between the two partner nations, stunned journalists reported the following.
The new tariffs will ruin the Canadian economy. Trump joked to him that if Canada can't survive without robbing the United States of $100 billion every year, then maybe Canada should become the 51st state and Trudeau could become its governor.
Trudeau was told to his face, "You, Canada, can't exist on your own. We pay for your defense, and out of friendship, we let you rob us of $100 billion a year, but we won't do it anymore. And I advise you, Justin, to ask to join us as the 51st state and go from being a president to becoming a governor yourself." Just to be clear, Shan doesn't want Canada as the 51st state. He doesn't want that. It was a metaphor. We don't need more socialists. We already have plenty. First, spend 50 years in the desert, and all of you who were socialists will die off, and then maybe we'll let you into the promised land called the United States of America. By the way, Trudeau is sickeningly sweet, in my opinion, of course, like some kind of super honey cookie. I can't stand men or women like that. You're afraid you'll get stuck to them like a fly. Alberta jumped into the fray when they heard there was a chance to join the United States of America. Canada's most productive province, Alberta, woke up from its slumber and said, "What about us? Us? Will you take us, us? We really want to go to paradise on Earth." Let me explain why it's paradise. The United States of America is changing its financial policy. How does that affect Alberta or Canada? What do they gain? Just wait and see. We are moving from robbing the population through income taxes to charging tariffs on those who want to trade with us. Hold on a second, you might say. But a tariff means an increase in the cost of goods, and it's the people in the United States of America who buy those goods and have to pay more. So instead of supposedly paying for the whole year in April, well, how do our taxes work? And you suggest calling it an income tax, like we'll pay every time we buy goods and call it a customs tax. And they called it something else, but it's the same thing either way, like it's still the same people we're still paying. Are you stupid or something? Americans, right? Isn't that so? The thing is, everyone who earns money pays income tax. And what's more, it's nasty, even worse, it's Marxist, meaning the better you work, the more you're punished. Well, let's imagine two artists. Yes, I had a company that represented an artist, so let's say two artists each painted a picture. The first one went out to the gallery, and 100 people started fighting over his painting. And instead of $100, tzadriks, shekels, I don't know, whatever currency you want, he wanted liras and got 1,000. Why did he get that amount? Because they started saying, "No, I'll give more, and he, so to speak, sold it to the one who offered the most, 1,000. And another one wrote it in such a way that nobody wanted it. Well, nobody wanted it. But he convinced someone like, "Please, just take it and buy it," and gave it to him for 10. He wanted 100, but gave it for 10. But those 10 didn't even cover the cost of the canvas, paints, electricity, stretcher, and so on. The government service comes to the first artist, who is very happy that he got 1,000, and says, "Here is the money. Where is it?" and takes it away from him. 600 out of 1,000 on one side, and on the other, let's also say 600. They take 300 for taxes and give the remaining 300 to the second artist. What would you say like that this happened, right? I mean, did they do the right thing by saving the untalented artist? But then the loser would stop wasting paint and would honestly go earn a living elsewhere. Well, I don't know, maybe he would get paid for something, like helping a tailor sew suits or carrying sand at a construction site, but instead I was paid for poor work. Untalented, bad, call it whatever you want. He didn't have to write, but got paid, then wrote something unnecessary and got paid again. 300, and the thieves from the treasury also got 300 from a good, hard-working, and talented artist, then another 300 from a good surgeon, and then another 200 from a master electrician, and 200 were given to the drunk, always drunk in the corner, who is also now an electrician, and life went on. This is Marxism, here is capitalism, so everything else, Marxism, this is Clintonism, Obamaism. Now let's talk about customs. So, for example, there's a car or a dress, something that came from abroad, and you decided to buy it. Instead of just having American and non-American products, you come up, you want the non-American one. Okay, there's also the American one, but because you want the non-American one, we impose a penalty on you, meaning the American one exists. Usually it's no worse, but maybe you just liked it more. If you want, take it, so to speak, but pay not X. Let's say if you bought a Buick, but pay X plus 10% if you wanted a Renault. Plus, if you buy our American one. If you get a Dodge Caravan instead of a Toyota van, you can write off part of the cost as a tax incentive, but if you buy a Swedish one like a Volvo, you can't. Because if you gave jobs to Americans, we want to encourage you, but if you gave jobs to Romanians, Italians, French, Zombians, Colombians, then why should we encourage you for hiring a Swedish worker instead of your own? So buy whatever you want, it's not a crime, go ahead, but it'll cost you more both in price and in service. What's so hard to understand here? Well, I don't know, I came to Paris. For example, the government subsidizes the Louvre so locals pay less, but why should they also subsidize foreigners? You approach the ticket counter at the Louvre. They ask for your identification to prove you're French. I'm not French. It costs this much. When I went with a friend, he showed his identification and paid 2 rubles. I asked the price and he said it's cheaper for us. Okay, no problem. Everyone understands. Foreigners come, you pay the full price. You don't have to go if you don't want to. You don't have to buy a Subaru if you don't want to. Buy a Ford instead of a Subaru. So if Canada is part of our country, the United States of America, then we buy their goods duty-free. And in addition, we write off part of the cost from taxes, so to speak. I won't explain for long now, but if Canada is considered a foreign country, then it's more expensive, it's taxed, and we can't write it off. American goods will be the same and cheaper. That is, let's say a locally assembled car will cost $20,000, roughly speaking, and the same car assembled in Canada and brought to us will cost $23,000 or $24,000. Well, then Canada will lose business in the United States and go bankrupt. Why would I buy a Canadian assembled car if it's more expensive than the same car assembled here? Why pay $23,000, let's say, instead of $20 if it's the same thing? Second, we will no longer protect Canada. If they want, let them spend their own money on military expenses. If they want, let them call China. If they don't want to, then China will quickly take them over, even if they don't want it. They have huge taxes in Canada, and it's still never enough. And if they become part of the United States, first of all, there will be, well, fewer taxes than they have now. Much fewer, actually. So they'll have more money left in their pockets. And secondly, they'll be paying less in taxes. They get full protection from the United States military machine. which means they live more safely, with more security and better overall confidence in the future. And some Canadians have started to realize this. At least those who work, and the ones who are quietly being robbed by the others.
In Canada, huge crowds of people lined up around the block near two packed community centers in central Alberta on Wednesday to attend a town hall meeting about the idea of the province separating from Canada. Alberta is known for being conservative and right-wing. Everything there is rodeo, and it's where Canadian cowboys are. The company Free Alberta organized and held the event. Visitors will learn more about the company and the independence referendum, and will also sign a petition for such a referendum. A common theme among the people who came to the event was the desire for change. I don't think that we here in Alberta and not here in the East, we want to see change. The petition was put forward by the Chief Executive Officer of the Alberta Prosperity Project, who addressed the gathering to confirm the December signatures. The Stay Free Alberta movement has nearly 4 months to gather about 178,000 signatures, which isn't that many. They need about 1 million signatures in California to get initiatives on the ballot, which isn't that many. The motivation came from concern for the future. I want change for my children so they don't carry this burden. With things as they are, that will happen. I want my children, who I fought for, to have something to believe in. Saying that Alberta should choose independence and the ability to govern itself without federal interference, that's cool. You can just do it. Federal overreach is awesome. You can just do things.
Why do they need independence? To get rid of Canadian taxes and levies, only to immediately ask the United States to accept them as the P of the first state? Well, if we don't want all of Canada, then there's Alberta, and there's another province, a state, the province of Saskatchewan. Sorry, I can't pronounce it again, but we'll accept them with open arms. Really open arms. It's like our Texas. By the way, hardworking people, family-oriented, moral, with that Quaker-like honesty, will take Alberta.
Large crowds in Alberta are signing a petition to secede from Canada and join the United States as the 51st state. Why not trade Minnesota to Canada and take Alberta instead? Look at all this land. Look at this gigantic territory. It looks amazing. Maybe we should just arrest the communists in Minnesota, kick out Smoley, and keep both.
It's a good idea to take Alberta and send the Somalis to Canada along with Ilhan Omar.
This is historic. The turnout in Edmonton isn't huge. Thousands of people are waiting to sign the petition for independence and choose a new path to protect the next generation from Canada's downward spiral. Look at the number of people.
This is what motivated people look like, and what is being done to them is robbery. They believed there was no escape until Trump appeared and said, "Join us, but only on fair terms." Like the 51st state, by the way, Alaska became the 49th state not so long ago, in April 1959, and Hawaii became the 50th state. I think it was in the same year, 1959, but a few months later. Why shouldn't Alberta, together with Saskatchewan, not Saakashvili, but Saskatchewan, become the 51st or maybe the 51st and 52nd states? But then Canada is done for. Alberta, with a population of about 12% of Canada's population, gives Canada at least 17% of its budget. Well, let's say the central province of Ontario gives a third less per capita to the country's coffers than Alberta does. So Alberta itself, let's put it this way, is a province that invests a lot into Canada, but in my opinion, it receives significantly less from the central government than many others. They're using us, say the people of Alberta. They're right, we want to go to America, we really do. Let us in. By the way, just to be clear, the indigenous people of Greenland also want to go to America. They've just been pushed back, so they're not visible. And it's the Danish liberal activists who are disguising things and protesting, the ones who took over Greenland and now make up about 10% of the population there. Well, and the provinces there are New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland. Everyone, like dogs called Labrador, just leech off the regions where industry is developed, and they're used to it. They get things just for existing, for being beautiful, for being charming, for voting for socialists. well, they get what is taken from others. So they definitely don't want to lose their donor, and they definitely don't want a Russian connection. Do you remember Michael Cohen, Trump's personal lawyer, who was his fixer for handling delicate matters? Michael is married to Laura Schusterman, and after leaving the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics with her parents in the 1970s, her father, Fima Schusterman, once owned children's taxis in New York and met the real estate tycoon Donald Trump. Fima recommended Donnie Donald, his son-in-law and junior partner, he was his partner at the time, as a sharp and resourceful guy. And Trump started paying Michael what's called a retainer, basically a base salary for handling certain delicate assignments and getting Trump out of trouble, which, as it turned out, billionaires often have with young, innocent girls. Well, pretty much all famous actors, celebrities, billionaires, and the like have these kinds of issues. They either have an entire agency, a law firm, or someone who goes around after them and takes care of all sorts of issues. Yeah, those fixers at some point. So when the New York legal hierarchy tried to sue Trump, Cohen suddenly started testifying against Trump and became the star witness for the prosecution, with judges, jury members, and so on basing their decisions on his words. How did it happen suddenly after such a long time and after Trump became president? Importantly, Michael shared with the press that he was blackmailed, pressured, and had no choice but to lie about Trump. He didn't want to, but he was forced to.
So, in this sensational Substack publication, Michael Cohen stated that he is not trying to defend President Trump, but instead wants to shed light on how cases are built and what happens behind closed doors before the jury hears a single word. And this morning, Aisha. President Trump seems to agree with Cohen's comments, partially writing on TRUTH Social, "It was a setup from the very beginning." Michael Cohen, once President Trump's personal lawyer, was considered a key witness in the hush money and civil fraud cases against then-presidential candidate Donald Trump. Now, Cohen claims that it was clear to him during his preparation for the two trials that prosecutors only wanted testimony that would convict Trump. He wrote on Substack specifically, and I quote, "Letitia James and Alvin Bragg may not hold the same office or follow the same political calendar, but they use the same tactics. Both use their platforms to boost their authority and present themselves as officials who brought down Trump. By doing this, they blurred the line between justice and politics, causing both to lose authority." Cohen, who served a prison sentence for fraud and lying to Congress, also wrote that he initially cooperated in these cases, hoping it would reduce his own sentence and secure early release from federal prison. We contacted the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and New York Attorney General's Office about Cohen's comments, but haven't received a response.
That is, I feel sorry for myself, and honestly, Cohen has lied so many times that it's hard to figure out when he's telling the truth, when it's a quarter truth, and when it's just an eighth of the truth. Well, as for the fact that he was pressured, well, that's natural. Of course he was pressured. Of course they lied. But there was no real case. That's why they forced him to lie, or rather they offered him something for it. Or on the contrary, they said, if you lie, then this and that will happen. Again, there was no actual case. Lev Parnas enters the stage. Another Soviet emigrant bursts into the case, thrown in with a rush. Former emigrant from the Soviet Union, Lev Parnas was born in Odessa in 1972 and was brought to the United States as a child. Lev was in the United States in the United States State Reserve, he was still too little to be doing any time for deceiving investors, for fraud, for connections with Russian oligarchs, and for embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars, which belonged to people who trusted him with their money. So basically, he took what wasn't his, Lev did his time, returned, I think, $2 or $3 million. Was it all or not? How would I know? And Michael Cohen, during his testimony, was so eager to please that he kept offering to snitch on different people, including Lev, yes, even Lev, or to find witnesses. Accusations against Parnas of criminal activity, and about freedom, the man himself served time, Parnas, who was previously connected with Rudy Giuliani in matters related to Ukraine. I don't know. Parnas went to jail because of Cohen, or Cohen was paid off and stayed quiet, or maybe something else. I'm not sure. What's important is that there was such a precedent. That's the main point.
So he established connections through other people. For example, he maintained a relationship with Matt Gaetz behind the scenes, and with others he tried to introduce into Trump's world. He even asked me how he could get in there because he has a way. He also told me to bring Jesse Jackson Jr. to him, saying he could bring Trump Democratic votes and Trump would win. And then Jesse Jackson would get a pardon. He would get a pardon. We would all get a pardon. I turned around and said, "You're a sick man, you are. If you think Trump cares about your plan, about democracy, while you humiliated him and his wife in front of the whole world because of his small penis." And Stormy Daniels. I asked, "So you don't know Donald Trump?" He replied, "On the contrary, I know Donald Trump very well. And I'm telling you, if we could find something," because he said "we," thinking that I also wanted a pardon, so I played along with him. He says, "If we find something big enough for Trump, he'll forget about it. Just look at what happened with Juris Doctor." Then something clicked for me. Then I realized what he was really up to and counting on. I began playing him in the background and listening to his talks, but I was already working on him by then. And then if you go back and watch some of our episodes of Revealed, you'll see that we started arguing and kept it up until the very end where we had that moment. So here's their plan, guys. Michael Cohen, I don't know how accurate that really is, who finally managed to get through to Trump's ears, lied about this whole incredibly exaggerated story to present it to Trump. And this is Michael's plan that he proposed to Trump. And I guess Trump bought into it because that's where we are now, that all of Trump's cases could be closed because that's where things stand now. At the appeal, Michael Cohen will speak and claim that he is being pressured. These prosecutors, namely Letitia James and Alvin Bragg, and specifically Letitia James and Alvin Bragg.
Here, the accused and convicted Lev is turning in Cohen, saying that he's supposedly lying this time to get back into Trump's orbit. So does this benefit the Democratic Party? So now everyone thinks Cohen is lying. He wasn't before, but is now. So who is lying? Actually, it's unclear, but I think both are lying. And like Cohen says, well, Vence said it, go check if he really said it or not. Well, Vence did say it, and Trump says nasty things. And then Trump saw that Vence could be useful to him, made him vice president, and forgot all his words and actions. Like, he could have made Cohen his vice president too. Probably, so you just need to become useful to Trump again, and he'll forgive everything. I think Lev is now taking revenge on Michael Cohen for exposing dirt about Parnas to the prosecutors. Maybe Parnas, like Jesus, gets slapped and offers his nose or ear instead. The question now is whether it's Lev Parnas or more likely his father, who's still buddies with Michael Cohen's father-in-law, Fima Schusterman, because by turning in Parnas, Michael was also turning in his own relatives from the New York business scene. I mean, Fima's relatives, as I understand it. Fima was also charged, I don't remember if he actually did time or not, but he was tried for fraud. Tax issues aren't serious, they're completely normal. I'm almost certain that they did time together in the same pretrial detention centers. And also in the same restaurants, Russian, Georgian, Armenian, I don't know. They danced at the same bar mitzvahs, maybe even rented apartments for their mistresses in the same building. But that's not in the open press, so we won't touch on that layer. Still, it means the lukewarm love between Parnas and Cohen was based on something. I think it was subtitles. I haven't decided on a strike against Iran yet, Trump said. I've put the attack on hold for now. I don't know yet, but the carrier group is heading to Iran and will be there in just 4 days. I think the bombers are already nearby, stationed at the bases, and the crew is on combat readiness. In Iraq, 10 kilometers from the Iranian border, the Marines have been moved to Iraq, I think. And Marines aren't just transferred to bases in Bahrain and Qatar for no reason. For Iran, whether intimidating or shooting, it's the same evil, reports say. So you are the authorities, and in 37 years of your rule, you've messed up so much that now we don't want to tolerate you anymore. Both top officials and all middle management should leave. All the commissars, or mulnas as you call them, still do exactly what commissars did. In this, they turned out to be close to both the socialists of Europe and the fascists of the Democratic Party of America. The clothes are different, but the soul is just as commissar-like. Iran, so all the millions of people in the country want, are begging Donald Trump to help them. We are laying down our lives so that America gains moral right. Bomb the Ayatollahs, the Revolutionary Guard, and all the mullahs who for 37 to 47 years have been destroying us as a people, robbing us, turning us into instigators of terrorism. Ayatollahs, get out. We want Trump. The Israelis, they want Trump. This is Israel's hope to get rid of Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, Iran, and Russia's influence. Of course, in the Middle East, they say we will live without wars. We will live without terror. Is that even possible? America, help us. We really need it. We won't spare any cost. In Venezuela, 3/4 of the country dreams, and then Trump comes and cleans up their mess, of course, from them. And who doesn't want Trump? They don't want Trump. American thieves, governors and mayors in Democratic states, Somali thieves and scammers, Venezuelan bandits, fascists from Russia who came here, communists from China, thieves from Ukraine, mullahs who also moved here to spread propaganda among Muslims, to kill as many of us as possible, whatever they call Jews, peasants, whites here, we absolutely don't care. The entire staff of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, and the subsidiary programs of these thieving organizations don't want Trump. And also the crazy suffragettes of Minnesota, the furious lesbians of California who have gone wild without men, and the transgender people caught in a bind. Poor souls, you feel sorry for them. At some point, they start to realize how foolish they were, how they were deceived. All right, I don't even want to talk about it. And of course, there are the enthusiastic globalists who lost their minds during marijuana smoking sessions in college. Although it's very difficult if you keep smoking all the time without stopping, eventually you start going into a major cult. The study of the suffering of African women since the 17th century due to the stupidity of their drunken men. It's a very necessary major, especially in America, and hundreds of employers are desperately searching for people with this major, but these women don't go to work. Instead, they join organizations that spy on immigration policy to get $1,000 a week for yelling in police officers' faces that they are enemies of the people and deserve to die, and immediately at that. And they get an extra $200 if they try to run them over on the roads with their cars. Nobody gives them cars. They drive their own and don't pay for gas. That's all for today because the repairs never end, but the money for them does. That's right, just like the news never ends, but my throat's ability to deliver information does. Without being hoarse, I'm starting to get hoarse, so I'll stop until next time.